Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Buddhist Biohacker. My name is Lisa Gunshore, and I am your host for Buddhist Biohacker each and every day, each and every week. And we are focused on creating conscious content for 1111D, and we've had such an incredible summer. And as we start to transition into fall already, which I can't believe, we are back with another very special guest, April Megginson. Welcome, April.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you. For everybody who's joining in the live stream, April is in our new documentary, Awakened Grace, and there's a lot more of April in part 2, so you got more story to come. And April, I'm just really happy to have you. You have such a great, I remember when you did the movement summit back in May, it was, oh my gosh, it was a while ago now. And when you taught your class, and I was just getting to know who you were, and your class was so nourishing, and you hold such a wonderful space for everyone. It was really, really incredible. Like, I don't know that I've experienced a yoga class in that way before. So I was grateful to connect with you, and I'm happy to have you here today. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. That's so meaningful.
Oh, you just really had a great energy. And I know we've talked about all sorts of cool stuff. And I want to start out just with you sharing with the community who you are, like just a little summary of your life.
I live in Virginia Beach. I'm about 2 blocks from the ocean. So that's wonderful. We just get to walk down or bike down. And it's just, the ocean is just so incredible to be near. And I am a yoga therapist. It's not, everyone says you got to do an elevator speech. And the thing that happens with me is that I individualize things so much that it's just very different. So it's not easy. All of my people say, I need people to meet you. I can't explain what you do. Can you tell me? And I said, no, I can't either. You've got to just experience it. So I just work a lot in dismantling habits. Habits are in our mind and they're reflected in our bodies. And so if we have what we consider bad posture, that's a whole domino effect of our shoulders slumped forward and our oxygen's less and our digestive organs are getting compressed. And, there's a lot of stress on the body, which creates a lot of stress in the mind and the nervous system. And so, I really work in where we are now. We have everything we need right now. We're going to talk about fascia, our favorite subjects, a little later on. However, what's so powerful about what I do is I give you back to yourself in a way. And only because I've done it for my own self. That's the only way I know how to. And while I'm working with you, I'm saying, are you clenching your jaw? Are you, and everyone's like, you're kind of magic. How do you know that? Because I do it. I'm doing the exact same thing you are. It's so true. So I work a lot with, accessing our strength, and really, I find myself in the past year or so really working with the juxtaposition of opposites. So in our culture, we're told, I have a lot of women or a lot of people come to me and say, my doctor says my core is weak. And I say, that's absolutely not true. And people are shocked when I'm like contradicting the doctor. But what it is it's language. And we're going to talk about that a little later too, I think. It's language. If you walked here or walked up steps or sitting or standing, your core is not weak. It's just that you're not accessing it properly. And so it's not about getting stronger, although that starts to happen as well. It's about accessing strength well and knowing when also that juxtaposition of opposite of relaxation. So why are you clenching your teeth when your belly's engaged? That sort of juxtaposition of opposites. So we're not just looking at how to build up all this strength. That's kind of useless, right? It doesn't really work in our day-to-day movement. So what we're doing is you can take this into anything. People ask me about swimming all the time. I teach glide walking. I teach the Four Noble Acts, which are from one of my teachers who's been on the show before, Angela Phillips. Walking well, sitting well, standing well, and lying well. Those 4 things are the blueprints for our bodies. If we can't do those things well, then we're not going to be able to do anything very aligned. So that's one aspect and piece of the puzzle. And it's teaching what our bodies do. You know, the root of our legs is in our bellies. The root of our arms is in our bellies. And I practically show that, because you know what? If it's not efficient, it's not worth it. It's just a waste of time. So I'm incredibly connected to being efficient and to just, it's not dramatic. It's just like, let's get this done. And this is who we are. And I'm also a certified life coach, which I help with building rapport and communication and goal setting and all of that. I also work with groups. So I do, I go into businesses that might not be having the best communication. And, we just talk about different ways to communicate. And it's just about all in every aspect, almost recognizing the habit. And also I do a little bit of NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming. And that's the thing I use that most for. And I know that a lot of businesses use this as far as how to communicate with the clients. The thing that I'm finding that's incredibly useful for is to process emotions and to really work through limiting beliefs. And it really clears very quickly when I work. Everyone I've ever worked with has kind of come to a really powerfully different space than when we started. And it's like, our summit in November is called Remembering Who You Are, correct?
Yeah.
That's what it is. That's what everything I do in a nutshell. That's my elevator speech.
I love that elevator speech. And, it's really true what you say about, being able to sit well and lie well. And I've noticed for myself, and I'm just kind of like connecting this to what you're saying, is there's this awareness. Like, I don't think we're aware of how we sit or stand. There's something about this like awakening moment where you're like, wow, like I really like I had this ear buzzing for a while. And I ended up laying in the bathtub one night, and it went on and on. I mean, this went on for like 3 months, and it was driving me crazy. Like my ears were just buzzing. And for whatever reason, this is one of those intuitive things. I was lying in the bathtub, and I took my fingers and I started rubbing my jaw.
Yes.
It hurt so bad. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, my ears, I'm clenching my jaw probably at night, even during the day. And it was this whole process of like releasing like the tension there. And so anyways, with what you're saying, there's such a thing about like, even while we're on here, it's like, okay, are my shoulders back? Like, where's the pain here? So it's just an interesting thing. Don't you think it's like connected to the awareness of the body?
That's the main piece of everything. It's just uncovering deeper and deeper layers of awareness. So as far as ears go, when people get really dizzy or they have a lot of ear pain and their doctors can't find out what it is, a lot of times I'll work with the jaw, and usually that releases it. And the other thing that you can really work with is like the fascial lines of the head. Because, that's all connected to the entire rest of your body, which is really powerful. I have this thing that I tell people, which is true, that when people come to me with chronic headaches, I never start in the face. I always start with their hamstrings.
Yep. I know all about those hamstrings. Well, my husband's been finding. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Interestingly, part of the hamstring issue is that we're not glide walking. The hamstrings get stretched when our leg is back and our glutes engaged well. And a lot of that has to do with our shoes, because when we're walking, all parts of our feet are getting used. So if we're not like on our tiptoes pressing back, with that, pressing out through our heel, the hamstring actually gets activated there. So I work a lot with posterior chain and engaging, full muscle group. And then I work a lot with, interestingly enough, like people, like I started to realize this in myself, things just aren't engaged. So there's something, called facilitated and inhibited muscles. So facilitated muscles, for example, would be your shoulders, the tops of your shoulders. They want to do everything. I call them like the golden retrievers of our bodies. I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do it. Right? They just want to do everything. And that's not efficient because pushing is more efficient than pulling. So the interesting thing in this scenario, because you can see my shoulders, is that our shoulders are often facilitated. That means we overuse. And then our serratus anterior, which is this muscle that kind of wraps around from this way, that literally looks like this, underneath that should be pushing, is inhibited. And inhibited actually is that awareness piece. It literally means that you can't activate that muscle with your brain. So the thing I always talk about, how we hitch the Chihuahua to the dog sled. I always talk about that because we're not using the correct tools, right? Our trapezius muscles up here are meant to actually turn our head from side to side. The only time we ever need to be using our trapezius muscles is if our arm comes in like this. Otherwise, our trapezius muscles are not meant to lift our arms, but they get so facilitated and so overused that there you go. The piece, it's not just your jaw clenching. It's about the fact that we all overuse our shoulders. So our inner ears are really affected by that because there's deep muscles in there and layers of fascia. And if we're constantly constricted here, then we're really losing a lot of efficiency of our bodies.
Interesting. What is glide walking? I want to hear more about that.
Well, so the psoas muscle, and that's spelled PSOAS, if you want to go ahead and look that up, anyone that's watching, it actually connects from the very center. So imagine the center of your body. So when I say center, I mean the very center and then in. And then your psoas muscle actually attaches to your lumbar vertebrae and comes off the vertebrae like wings or like hands like this. It's actually quite a thick muscle, and it's right in the center of the vertebrae. And it comes off, and then it comes off this way, and then scoops down under your digestive organs like it's a hammock. So that old adage of going for a walk after dinner is actually true. It helps your digestion because you're actually massaging your digestive organs. So then this muscle comes over top of the pubic bone and actually attaches to the head of the femur bone, which is the top of your thigh bone. That implication is so profound to how we walk. We walk from right underneath our rib cage. So the psoas actually swings us forward. And then the glute, once our legs all the way back, the glute max, the big one, actually supports the psoas muscle to swing the leg back. So the psoas is doing the work of the swinging. And then the glute is the glute med, which is that hip stabilizer on the side of your hip, which a lot of people don't use. That's why a lot of people have arthritis in their hips. And they have all these really deep issues of hips because no one ever told them to use their glute med. So I do a lot of strengthening of gluteus medius. So when you're balancing on one leg, which is when you're running, you always are 100% of the time on one leg, right? So if you're not using that glute med, so imagine this is your hip cup, that's your acetabulum, and this is your femur bone that comes right up into it. And I don't have a third hand, I wish I did. But if you're not using your glute med, then you're kind of like all wonky. So this glute med out here stabilizes your hip in your bone in your hip cup.
Interesting.
So you're using your glute med and your glute max and your psoas primarily when you glide walk. And it's really interesting because it changes how people feel. Their knees hurt because they're bent. You don't bend your knees a lot in glide walking. There's just a slight, slight bend. That's not even a good word. A slight softening of the knee, right? But there's not a lot of bend. If you see somebody taking really short steps or bending their knees, they're not glide walking. And very few people know how to glide walk or even know it's a thing. But it's just
I've never heard of it. That's so interesting. I've never heard of that till right now. It makes so much sense though.
It's primal posture stuff. So you have heard of it, you just don't know. Think about all those beautiful indigenous women, whether in Africa or wherever, with incredible long necks, and they've got that big thing on their head. That's glide walking.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
I like it. Oh, that's so cool. Okay. Oh, I could talk to you forever about all this stuff because it's so...
No, I didn't even have that on the list, did we?
No, but I love it because for me, it's just been such a journey, like going from, complete unawareness of my body. I mean, I just had a lack of awareness of my body. I was really denying my body. I just didn't want to look at it or deal with it in any way, shape, or form. And then when I finally connected and really felt it and looked at it, it's been such an incredible journey of healing. And so this stuff fascinates me because we just don't learn enough about how to take care of our bodies. So it just is so good to know that there's this information's out there, I guess.
It's true. And I think you only come to this information once you've had a lot of pain. Like I was in my mid-20s to 30. By the time I was 30, I had 2 bulged discs and that's pretty early, Everybody's kind of experiencing this now, and they're asking me what to do because I've never felt better in my body even since I was a teenager. I mean, I had a really extra long spine, and I have slumped all my life. And, I had major headaches. I had TMJ. I was on acid reflux medication. I was on I woke up with stiffness in my body all the time, and I was literally locked up, even though I don't use that wording a lot. And, then I had those 2 bulged discs. I had knee pain since I was a kid. It just on and on and on. And so it's been a process of exactly that, just about awareness. And interestingly enough, speaking of that, the people that find me are the people who are ready to not deal with that stuff anymore. So let's be honest, that's a certain age group. I love you all that are watching. But my age group is, the people I work with are usually 50 plus. They usually are 50 plus. I've got a couple 83, 85-year-olds.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it's not about doing old stuff. We're not working, wimpily whatsoever, if that's a word that I just made up. I mean, but the thing is that age group is done with having to strive and having to do the overrunning and overdoing and all that. And now everyone in that age, or people in that age group, are like, how can I just feel better and create something for longevity? Why do I have to age, and get the big kyphotic curve and have all this pain and then neuropathy and then, why does it have to be that way? It doesn't, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And it's important work. I mean, it's important work to do. I have not been in practice as much as I was over the summer. I've not been in practice as much as I was in the springtime. But
I haven't been doing much.
I know, just a little. But I will say, there's this work. It's once you start to see the traction in what you're doing, it's you don't want to stop. It's once I started to notice, I actually noticed, because our family, we all naturally hunch. And I started to notice, it doesn't, I'm not fatigued to sit up straight. All those little things are so, so, so important. I mean, so important. I want to ask you about empowered embodiment, because that's what we were going to talk about. Because otherwise I could go into a whole thing like just about all that other stuff, but I want to make sure.
That's what we are talking about. So I got that name and I just loved it. And I actually changed the name of my online classes that I do every week to Empowered Embodiment now instead of yoga therapy. Yeah, it's just, I do weights on Wednesday mornings. I actually have people doing weights. I mean, it's just not the old, I haven't taught a down dog in 5 years or plus, and not that there's anything. Down dog is a beautiful pose. And also it's a super advanced pose that, is supposed to be in the beginning stages because that's just how it is. But, I started to realize that's a very advanced pose if we're going to do it right and not hang out and dump into our joints. So I think empowered embodiment is about, let me just list them. It's about starting to awaken to your own potential as it is. So the body is always at potential 100% of the time, our entire lives, whether we're 1 or 101. And we're at potential right now to move into alignment or to move into misalignment. Neither one is bad or good. It's not about being bad or good. It's about noticing, just like in meditation, we notice the spinning mind, and it's a victory when we say, hey, my mind was spinning. That's totally fine. That's the nature of the mind. It's what our minds do. And also, I caught it. That's amazing. I had a friend recently, and she might be listening, who is just so dear to me. And she said, by the way, I always say this, don't should on yourself, right? Yes. Don't should on yourself. So she said, I should get better at my posture. And I said, listen, you don't need to think about that right now. The weight of the world is on you. She's going through a lot of things right now, and she's handling them incredibly gracefully. She's an amazing person. And she has a little stoop to her shoulders. And you know what I told her? Don't even think about that right now. If the weight of the world is on your shoulders, you're bearing that weight right now. And if you try to straighten up right now, then where's that weight going to go? Like right now, you can handle it in your shoulders. You can handle it there. Let it stay there. It's not about having to move from this to that. It's not about that. It's about noticing that we're at potential at all times and not having to think about the end of the road. There is no such thing as that. How can I be at potential right now? Well, right now, sitting here where I can be at potential is I can move my elbows back a tiny bit and maybe lengthen my spine and relax my jaw. That's how I just came into deeper potential sitting here talking to you this very moment.
That's so beautiful. And that's cool because that's part of what we've talked about here, even on the show about, our timelines that we're living on. There's a highest potential path, a highest potential timeline for each and every one of us. So I love what you're saying is like in this moment, how do we reach that highest potential?
Exactly. And that highest potential is not tomorrow's highest potential. And it's also not next week's highest potential. So it means, we can't just go from posture that we've had all our lives to out of it, right? I talk about that a lot. I say, if our posture, imagine, the Colorado carved the Grand Canyon out. That's our posture. However old we are, that's our posture. You can't just come out of that. What has to happen is you have to be gentle, you have to notice, and you have to gently, just like you do with the mind, because it's all one thing, right? You have to gently make a commitment to unwind. It's unwinding. It's almost like, when you see a hummingbird floating around?
Yeah.
And you corner of your eye and you turn and it's gone?
Yes.
That's what this is about. It's not about this hard gaze and like the Rocky song. It's about catching that slight little movement in the corner of your eye. And if you look too hard of it, it goes. I mean, it's really powerful work. I mean, I had a couple people just this week. I had one lady. So the stuff I do, especially when you work with me for a few years, it changes bone density. So she got her bone density test back and had really improved in her bones, because again, you're stacking your bones and then you're creating, bone density. And, I have another man who I just love, and he says he went back to his trainer at the Y this week, or maybe a couple weeks ago, and he said, my trainer said I'm the only one that came back stronger than when I left, and I'm straighter, my posture's better. I mean, it just went on and on and on.
Oh, that's so awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome, and it's amazing. I mean, to me, that I can be doing this because I love it so much, and people are getting what I'm doing, which is like, they just kind of look at me like, I don't know about that. I'll trust you. So thank you, everyone. But then they see the results. I mean, the results are astounding. They really are astounding.
That's amazing. Well, and it's really about being where you're at. And I think sometimes you go to a trainer, or, I love to practice yoga alone, because you go to a yoga class, and even as a yoga teacher, when I was teaching in the studios last year, like, there's so much intimidation to like be where all the other people are. And even as a yoga teacher, because it was like, who's going to do the better handstand, and there's this competition energy, and it's like, well, I can't even do that. So, you start to get down on yourself. So I really love this whole idea of just being where you are and being the best of who you can be where you are. That to me is where the empowerment comes from.
Exactly what I was going to say. That's what's empowering. To understand that your bones don't articulate in your joints like someone else's does, right? That's huge. I hurt my wrist doing my first teacher training about 10 years ago because the teachers didn't really understand that concept. So like for me, see how my wrist, I'm mirroring here, see how my wrist doesn't go, see how my hand doesn't go flat? Those of you, this is a little side note, so if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's fine, but it's a yoga push-up chaturanga. I did so many thousands of those, forcing my wrist straight, that I hurt my wrist. It hurt for 10 years. And because of that, and finally I figured out myself, like, oh, my hand doesn't even do that. My hand, not only that, but I've got to go forward on top of it. No, that's not happening. So, there's all these things that you start to realize. And I teach a lot about this too. I mean, a lot about how your pose is going to be totally different than mine because of how our bones articulate in our joints. And that's something that I forced myself into without knowing. And that's why I know how to teach it now, because I forced myself into it and I hurt myself. So every little thing that I've done to myself has been nothing but kind of a blessing and this incredible way in to understanding how to empower someone around the body they have right now, regardless of age, weight, injury, you name it. I've worked with injuries and illnesses that are, we can't do anything but be on a bed or not even get on the floor, right? So it's about just being where you are now. And the more you understand how your body works and how your mind works and how your breath works, the more you unlayer that, the more you move throughout your life empowered and embodied. So I tell my people, check in with 3 things every day. Where are you clenching? Where are you rigid? And where are you dumping into your joints? So those things are going to tell you. I taught a class the other day and I asked everyone, how do your arms feel? If they feel heavy, it's not about your arms. Our arms and our head are actually placed where they are by our rib cage. It's not about holding our shoulders back. That doesn't do anything but take us into a deeper issue. It's about getting our rib cage straight by our center. And it's about, if we're standing, walking, or doing anything standing, it's about having legs that are strong and not rigid, so that we have the space in our centers to engage well. There's a lot of pieces to it. However, it's really interesting because, you know, there's this incredible book that I love. It's called Natural Born Heroes. And it's about, have you read it?
No, I'm writing it down right now.
Read it. It's by Christopher McDougall, and it's just amazing. I taught 10 years of history, by the way, so I also love history. I just love it. So it's a book about how the Cretians, that's what the Greek island, the Cretes, they resisted Hitler longer than Russia did. And really, there's a whole case in this book about how Crete's timeline actually was threw the Nazis off, and we were able to win the war through a series of domino effects. The whole point is, the reason why they could resist is because they were all in their fascia. They could jump from rock to rock to rock to rock, you know, like we see mountain goats doing. And so this whole book is about how fascia is so empowering. It's why we can, you know, see these videos of a baby getting stuck under a car and the mom lifting the car up, right? Because we have that potential in our bodies. It's just latent.
Wow.
So right now, you're going to think this is hilarious. Right now, I am like a little bit obsessed with Formula One racing. You know, and the reason why is because those men are at the absolute forefront of physical and mental acuity. They're not in their heads at all. They are absolutely responding fascially in everything that they do because it's going so fast. Their brains wouldn't be able to process it. It takes 3 seconds for our brains to process it through our nervous system. It takes the speed of sound to process fascially.
Wow.
720 miles to process fascially. So it's instantaneous. So they don't know it exactly, but watching them drive, they go from 280 down to 60 miles an hour in 2 seconds. This curve's coming up, right? And they have to do that in their bodies. Their minds aren't able to process it. It's too quick.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So that's an incredible book. And it's interesting for really anyone at all. And it talks about how we became a muscle culture and how, if we look at indigenous tribes and, the marathon, he talks about the marathon runners, not the marathon, the original Greek reason it's called marathon because of because back in Sparta and Athens and all that, they would run for miles and miles and not get tired. I'm talking 20. I'm not talking 20 miles. I'm talking 50, 100.
Wow.
Yeah, but our bodies have that potential, and that's what I think is so powerful to unlock. And the implication is, when we feel less weight in our arms and we feel less pain in our ears or ringing in our ears, or we feel less tension in our jaw and we feel bigger breaths, guess what? We're way more open to receiving and connecting with everything around us. It's not this small vision that keeps us trapped and all these reactions coming up, and we don't even know we're operating out of these reactions because we're so chained to our nervous systems, and we don't understand how our nervous systems work. And so what happens is our emotions, in fact, our emotions are really amazing because our emotions are actually a physiological response that we can't suppress. So anger, right? We all know what anger feels like. It comes up, it gets flushed, it's here, right? So if we stop and we let that process through, then we can let it be gone. Otherwise, it lodges in the body, and that is absolutely true. So emotions, there's a little bit of controversy here, but there's only about 25 to 35 emotions that have been, this is over a lot of tests and a lot of studies. I think I wrote an article about this on the OHO website, actually.
Yeah, you did. I'll put that up so you guys know how to find it.
That implication is so powerful because that means we can't stop emotions any more than we can stop a heartbeat, any more than we can hold our breath and not pass out, right? Our emotions must process. Now, the other piece to that is the feelings attached to it are the habits of our minds, right? So there's 4,000 plus still going on feelings attached to that. So that's why we all react so differently. So let's say I have anger and I don't process it, and then I become enraged at whoever's around me. Let's say you have anger, and I don't know how you do this, but let's say you have anger, you don't process it, and you go sit in a corner and like cry, right? And not that either one is both are legitimate, but the issue is the feelings around it. So if we can let the emotion move through physiologically, then we can notice what feeling am I having around this. Exactly. And it's not traumatic. It's the exact same thing as noticing if I'm clenching my jaw. Am I clenching my jaw? Oh, yeah, I am. Am I in this habit of childhood or whatever around this anger? Oh, yeah, I am. Interesting. Really interesting. So I think there's a really big piece there of understanding. And, a lot of my work is about permission. It's about permission to be who you are. Emotions are a part of us. Trying to suppress emotions shows up in all other kinds of aspects, whether it's heart disease or stress or, whatever it may be, hypertension, adrenal fatigue. You can go on and on and on. It's about that suppressing of emotions. So we let it move through, and a really good way to do that, to process it, is just to feel it in our physiological bodies. We know what grief feels like. It's behind our eyes, behind our noses. It's like almost in our sinuses, and it's like almost in our throat here welling up, right? We can all connect to that. It's a physiological response. And I think that's really powerful to know that emotions are in our physiological framework and feelings are in our mental framework. Mental, we can start to change because that's a habit. Like I said earlier, habits are in the mind, and it's reflected in our physical bodies.
Makes sense. Well, and so what is your process when you're working with somebody to work through the emotional piece? How do you combine those, or what does that integration look like for you as a yoga therapist?
Well, so interestingly enough, it works across, sorry, there's a little fly in here. It works across all of our systems. As soon as we start to realize that we can't help some things, and we give ourselves permission in our joints, and we give ourselves permission here, we start to, something unwraps. It's almost like, you have a paint can and you can't get it out. Well, you have that tiny little like opening, and then the rest kind of comes out. And that's what really goes on there, is when we give ourselves permission, and as Pema Chodron says, we start to make friends with ourselves, really, because who's our own worst enemy but ourselves? So when we start to make friends with ourselves and accept ourselves in gentleness, and start to bring these pieces back into ourselves that we've rejected or hidden or not wanted to look at, then we start to become more whole all around. So when I do, if I'm working more with trauma or, something like that, we don't do yoga therapy at all. I have the person sit with me, and we process the negative emotions, and then we work on limiting beliefs. through, I don't know if you've heard of the transderivational search, but it's working with the unconscious mind. And it's basically just going in and saying like, that program's old, let's pull these things out and stick them in the delete file. Let's double delete them, make sure they're gone. And they really are gone. It's magic. It's our unconscious minds are magic. But see, the thing is I'm always working in unconscious mind. So I know how to teach that way, but no one knows I'm teaching that way. There you go, everyone that's watching me. I'm really conscious about the words I use. I never use the word bad because it sends your mind on a search for what's bad. I never use the word weak. I say, what side's challenging you? Not what side is weak. I say, what side is challenging you? So I don't use those lower energy words because those words send our minds, oh, what's bad? Oh, what's a problem? Oh, what's this? No, we all say no problem or no worries. We're actually telling each other at this point, this is language of action. Our unconscious mind goes on that transderivational search of what we need to worry about and what our problems are, because that's how our mind works. An open-ended question like that just sends our mind on a ticker tape search. So it's kind of like if we were walking along and I said, hey, Lisa, do you remember the name of that one person? And you said, no, I don't. And then I remember it in the shower 10 hours later, right? That's that transderivational search working. It's resolving the question that we had. And so when we speak that way, we're actually sending people either on a search of what's the problem? What's the worry? What's bad? You answer the phone, you say, how are you? Not bad, not bad. You're saying you're bad. You're saying like, okay, go look for this word and let's see what's bad in my life. So, sometimes you are around somebody and you don't know why. However, you leave and you're like, why do I not feel good right now? What? Like, this person didn't say anything that was upsetting. Why don't I feel good? Why is my brain looking for what's wrong and bad and problems? Like, we might not even know that. We might just feel a sense of crumminess. However, once we do know that, we can give people an experience of connecting with us that's meaningful. Mm-hmm. By really knowing, by really crafting our words.
I love that. What made you decide to do this? Like, what was it that you said? Because you obviously know your stuff, obviously. And I know you're good at what you do. Like, what was that moment where you thought, this is what I'm going to go do with my life?
So I have that intuition. And as soon as I get it, I know. I just do it. I don't know what the heck I'm doing any of the time when that happens. So I was a school teacher and as I mentioned, I was feeling really challenged in my body. And I went to a yoga class and one of my best friends looked at me after that class and said, wow, something just shifted. She's really intuitive. She said, something shifted. And this was about 12 years ago. And I looked at her with these huge eyes and I was like, yes, I don't know what happened, but I want more of that. And so I just kind of practiced and then I just throw myself into stuff kind of sometimes. And, I signed up for a regular 200-hour training, got out of that. And then I had so many people coming to me. My back is in pain. My neck hurts. And so I got this book and I can't even remember what it was. It was like 2012. I got this book and it talked about back pain. I think it was something by Lauren Fishman, I think is his name. Maybe it was an osteoporosis book. Anyway, I got that and it said, don't work with a regular yoga instructor. Make sure you work with a yoga therapist. And I'm like, what the heck is that? I've just been through this 200-hour training. I've never heard of that. And so I looked up, of course, that day I looked up yoga therapy. And I looked up where I could do it. There's only maybe 12 in the country at that point. So I live in Virginia Beach. I drove up to DC for 3 years. And it was like a master's degree. had like 1,000 hours, and drove up there for 3 years. And IAYT, which is the International Association of Yoga Therapists, where I was one of the first 500 yoga therapists in the world. Yeah, so I was like ahead of the curve, had no idea about any of it. I just kind of followed. I just fell into it, honestly. I mean, not really. I was guided into it. However, I didn't know what I was getting into. I mean, I remember my first one. I was up in DC. I drove up there, didn't know a soul, didn't know what I was getting into. Stayed with this lovely person who's amazing, but never met her. My husband's like, call me as soon as you get there. You're staying at this house. You don't know anybody. You don't know, like, nothing. And I remember walking in my first day, and it was just all musculoskeletal anatomy. And I am very capable. I'm a very capable person, and it doesn't happen to me often where I don't think I can do something. And I went to the instructor and I started sobbing, and I go, I can't do this. I can't do this. Like, I was so overwhelmed. She goes, no, you're going to be fine. Just, you're going to be fine. I promise. And I was, and obviously it was incredibly valuable. And the other thing that was incredibly valuable, or that is incredibly valuable, is it's all about experience. I have the framework from that piece of yoga therapy, that 3 years. However, the stuff I'm doing now is a springboard from that, because I'm working where I am. So I'm working in my own body. I'm seeing what works in other people's bodies. I mean, the stuff I do, I've totally made up most of it. I mean, you're not going to see a normal pose, normal yoga pose in my class ever, because it's just not yoga anymore. Even people in my class are like, we've got to change the name. So, I love the word yoga because it means wholeness and union. However, does it actually describe what I do? I'm just not sure anymore. So I like to keep a really open mind, and things that I've done in the past, I just let them go. Like, I don't get attached, because the more I know, the less I know.
Isn't that the truth? I mean, my gosh, I'm with you on that one. It's like every single time I read an article or a book, or even talking to a client, it's like, oh man, like there's this whole other world that you open up every time you have a conversation, I feel like.
It's so true. So, I mean, I do my best, and I have absolutely cultivated a pretty hardy toolbox, so I can just pull tools out at any time I need to, and I can adjust. And also, if that tool's obsolete, goodbye. Like, we don't need to waste time on that. Maybe it works for then, and that's fine, and we don't need it anymore.
Yeah. Oh, well, I want to give you some space. Isn't it crazy how much time like just boop, doesn't exist in this world that we live in here on Buddhist Biohacker. But I want to give you some space to share with everybody, like, what you offer, how they can access you, all of those things. I want to make sure that we have time to talk about all of that. And you guys, I know we've got April's website and her Instagram up for everybody who's watching. And if anybody has questions too, I invite you to share those questions in the chat box. But April, why don't you share a little bit about what you're offering? I know you just launched online this year, which is exciting for all of us. And so tell us about what you have and how folks can access you.
Yeah, so it's really exciting. My website's down there, and I teach Zoom classes 3 times a week, Eastern Standard, because I'm on the East Coast. Let me think. Mondays at 11, Wednesdays are weights at 10:30, and Fridays at 11, and it's only 45 minutes. People have stuff to do, not to say that's not important. However, we can get done what we need to get done in that amount of time, I'm finding, and people really appreciate that piece of things. So yeah, anyone can just join. The links are up every week. You can go to my website, you can join. Payment methods are at the top, and you can just, I take everything. I took nothing 6 months ago but cash and check, and now I have everything. PayPal, Venmo, credit card, you know how it is. It's like, man, we've just gone into some quantum learning this past 6 months of just, launching a website and figuring out Zoom. I remember my first Zoom session and I was like just terrified, like, is the lighting right? Can people hear me? And now I'm like, I love this venue. You've got people blogging on from Colorado, Maine, Florida. My parents live in Florida. I live in Virginia Beach, so it's just incredible because I'm finding that there's way more connection across what's going on. So, it's really fun. We're a little community that just, I just love the people I work with. They're amazing.
Yeah.
Also,
it's.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that you can do, I do private Zoom, and that, I do like yoga therapy, private sessions, and that could be anything really, depending on what you're experiencing. And then I do, NLP or life coaching as well. So all that information is on my website, however, so it's really easy to access there.
Awesome. Well, and it is exciting. We have been in these quantum leaps. I did not know I was going to be live on YouTube like 20 hours a week. And here we are. So, I don't know that I'll be doing that in 2021 as much as I have now, but it is kind of fun to just be able to talk and share. And I agree with you. We've come a long way from those very first Zooms that all of us were on, where it's like, oh, how do you work this? What do we do? Right?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes.
Now I have my fancy software and logos and all sorts of cool stuff.
It looks so good. I love the new software.
Me too. So what do you want to talk about in our last few minutes? Because I feel like, and I hope you come back, and I'm sure you will, and April's also going to be part of our One Heart, One Earth Global Healing event in November, which is the Awakening event. Remember who you are. You guys can register at oneheartoneearth.net. And she's also in our documentary, Awakened Grace. Oh, and so I know, so good. And so there are lots of ways to learn about April and connect with her, but I do hope you come back. And it took us a long time to get here for some reason, but I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours because there's so much cool stuff that and so much you bring to the table. But what do you want to share today? What's your parting words of wisdom today? Like, what do you want to talk about here at the end?
Okay, I might have two things. So just cut me off or, shorten me. First thing is biotensegrity. Tensegrity is a Buckminster Fuller word, which I think is really interesting. And it's the difference between a compression or a tension model. So let me explain that. A compression model would be like a building, brick by brick by brick. A tension model would be like a spoke, like the spokes are in a bicycle wheel. So we are this is a huge reframe. This is huge for our unconscious to understand that our bodies, because of fascia, do not work as a compression model, even though this is new information. The first fascial council wasn't until 2007. So we are really on the forefront of really amazing things happening as far as our knowledge of fascia. So to understand that, let me tell you the implications. So to understand that, a compression model just breaks down. Think about a brick building. It's really not, a brick falls out and the whole thing, right? That's not how we work. So that changes our potential for feeling aligned or misaligned. So we're a biotensegrity model, so in this model, our bones are the compression and our fascia is the tension. So I think Tom Myers says it in Anatomy Trains. We are islands of compression, our bones floating in a sea of tension, which is our fascia, which changes everything because our bones don't touch each other. They're wrapped in this fascia, this connective tissue. And the other really powerful thing about this connective tissue is this is on the forefront of human technology because of about ourselves, if that's the right way to say it. So recently, interstitial fluid. So imagine what interstitial fluid is. It's imagine a spider web and the dew on the spider web. That's how I like to describe interstitial fluid. The interstitial fluid is actually our largest organ, not our skin. And the implication of that is that, and if you've ever seen these fascia videos, there's a doctor in France, and I can't remember his name. However, you can look up these fascia videos. And the reason we didn't know this before was because if you cut yourself, if doctors cut you, right, the cut would happen and then you just go straight to muscle. So fascia, when you cut fascia, it's like a rubber band. It springs apart. So we didn't know this until we got the really small cameras that can go through the body, and it's like this incredible landscape happening. However, if our fascia from head to toe, and there's so much more to talk about with fascia, but I'll just say, if our fascia from head to toe is not responding, it's like a run in the pantyhose, right? So that's why I said earlier that if I have somebody that I work with for headaches, I don't start at their head. I start with their hamstrings, because that's the fascial line to the head. It starts underneath our feet. It goes up through our heels, goes through the back of the leg, around our glute max, up our low back, and then ends right here at the top of our forehead. And we didn't have the dissection tools necessary to understand what fascia was until maybe the last 20 years, which is really powerful. Now, the other thing that scientists are finding is that perhaps, and again, not sure, we don't know, perhaps our consciousness may lie in our interstitial fluid, which is powerful because that absolutely means that our bodies need to be in as best order as we can keep them, because otherwise it's not communicating, right? It's really powerful. I did a study one time because I just was so fascinated by fascia. And you can imagine fascia being like cloth. And if your fascia gets too stuck, so we get really stuck when we're hunched forward and the fascia gets stuck here. So imagine that becoming concrete spider webs. So the interstitial fluid's like barely moving. You're not able to even get up. So even if you try to get your shoulders back, you can't, right? So there's no connection, or there's very little connection happening here. But I started doing this study and I started to look in at all these ancient myths about weaving, right? And about spider, and about how like consciousness is in weaving, right? And all this stuff, this incredible myths about cloth and weaving, and the spider. I think I have her back there. I don't know if you can see her. The spider mother, right? The spider grandmother, all of this. And if I wrote an article about it at one point, and I really, what do I know? I don't know. I really have a feeling though that those myths are about the human body, literally the human body.
That's amazing. It seems like I need to get you and Deanna from Block Therapy together, because I feel like fascia. Yes, because I'm like you. I'm loving what you're talking about. I'm gonna go look these videos up. Fascia. I'm also fascinated by fascia, and as I've completed my Ayurveda practitioner training, it's just sort of everything, really. I mean, fascia carries everything. It carries the trauma. It's directly related to your plasma. There's so much about it. So, oh my God, this is like a whole other show.
It's everything.
It wakes me up for some reason, And so hearing you talk about it, I'm like, oh my God, yes.
Well, so let me explain one more thing, and then I know we're going to be done. There's different types of connectives. There's different types of fascia. So I'm talking about myofascia specifically, which is imagine if you unpeeled a grapefruit, right? You unpeel a grapefruit and the pith keeps the grapefruit together. That's our fascia. So we have to actually like that's what the fascia, that's what the myofascia is. There's also other fascia, which is our tendons and ligaments and all of that. That's also connective tissue. However, I'm talking specifically, and I think you are too, about that myofascia right underneath our skin, connecting our skin to our muscles, and all throughout. It's just woven throughout us. It's incredible system.
You're like blowing my mind right now because of part of my, I don't really want to say gifts because I feel like everybody has the same abilities. So I don't really want to use that word. So I'm trying to think of, but part of what my spiritual toolkit or whatever is being a medical intuitive. And I see a lot of things in the body that I can't really explain. And I'm not an anatomy guru, so I don't always know what I see. So we're going to have a whole separate talk because you're blowing my mind, because what you're explaining about the weaving, I have very specific things I see in the subtle body that's related directly to this. So it's friggin' amazing.
Yeah, it is you're going to hear, everyone's going to hear a lot more about it in the future. And it's because it's really the forefront of exploring who we are as humans, especially if consciousness resides there. I mean, that's huge. If our fascia isn't in good order, then we have a lot of shutdown happening.
Yeah.
And it's all one thing. Yeah.
So good. We have so much to talk about right now. Thank you guys for your comments, by the way. I never think I say this gal's name right, but I think it's Agnieszka. But she's saying, you're so amazing and interesting. And yes, April is so amazing and interesting. April, I hope you come back on. I feel like we need to have a part 2 weaving fascia convo.
Oh, I'd love it. I could talk about it forever. I teach teacher training sometimes, advanced ones, the 500-hour ones. And I have a whole, I teach 12, 14 hours on it. So I got a lot to say.
Let's do it. But thank you for coming on today. Time flies in here. It's crazy how fast it goes. Thank you to everybody who's watching. I'll throw April's info up here one more time so you guys can connect in with her. Again, she's also in Awakened Grace, and her full story is going to be in part 2. So part 2 should be releasing on Friday. I'm doing on it right now. So I'm trying to stick to my deadlines. And April will also be in the November Awakening event of this year as well, which is awesome. Thank you, April, so much for having you on. I love seeing you and talking to you always.
Thank you. Always love it. We have so much to talk about.
Oh, we do. We got to talk way more than we do. So let's do it. And I love you so much, and love to everybody who's watching. We're back tomorrow, and April's back tomorrow with us because she is one of our One Heart, One Earth clinicians. And so we'll be back tomorrow talking about fall. So you guys can actually catch me and April back along with Julie Ware and Cheryl Garcia, the Colorado herbalist. We'll be back tomorrow. So thank you, April.
Thank you so much.
Bye, guys.